Hey everyone, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Feel free to continue to just put your information in there, who you are, where you're from, how you're feeling today. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Identifying Access Gaps and Dual Enrollment webinar. So I'm Sesson Preliot. I'm a higher education policy analyst at the Education Trust West. I'm also joined here by my colleagues Dan Stores, who is a vice president at Pathways Implementation for Link Learning Alliance, as well as Kylie Campbell, who's a director at Career Ladders Project. And we're additionally joined by one of our guest presenters that I'll get right to, McKenna Salazar, who is Executive Director of We Will at the K-16 Educational Collaborative. So really excited to be joined together by awesome colleagues who are doing amazing work to really talk about the agenda that's listed here for you today. So first and foremost, of course, I've given the welcome already, but we're just gonna jump first into a little bit about Jumpstart, what that is, its background, and a foundation in equity. And then we're gonna transition into the reason why you're all here today, the Dual Enrollment Access Gap tool. So we're gonna talk about a little overview for the tool itself, as well as the We Will experience. And lastly, we're gonna wrap up with a little bit of synthesis. So really looking at equity and access for pathways, and then close out. But thanks again for joining us today. So, first and foremost, I know maybe not everybody's familiar, but coming from EdTrust West, I just want to give a brief introduction of who we are and what we do. So, our mission really is committed to advancing policies and practices to dismantle racial and economic barriers embedded in California's education system. And we prioritize Black, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, and Native communities within that context, and particularly multilingual learners and those experiencing poverty to really ensure that equity is met for them in our state. So I'm gonna give a quick little background in terms of Jumpstart, but I felt like this timeline might be really helpful to kind of contextualize that before going into it. So we really started with everything really started for us with the Jumpstart report, which was initially published in 2017, followed by the Jumpstart mapping tool, which I'll dive into a little bit more as well. And then we updated both of those in 2022. And then, which brings us to 2025, where we're building on the foundation of those in terms of releasing a dual enrollment equitable access brief, more advocacy materials such as a toolkit, and then Black Minds Matter, which is a report we just released in February that has a lot of implications to do with dual enrollment. But all of these are really part of what we call the Jumpstart Suite. So the Jumpstart report, as I mentioned before, was initially published in 2017 and updated in 2022. So it details some of the key opportunities provided to California students through dual enrollment, and really emphasizes the importance of equitable access for all students within that context. Really, particularly those at the margins, because while we know dual enrollment is an amazing opportunity for all, we know not all students have the availability and accessibility to take these courses. And we really want to ensure that students who are already marginalized are not further marginalized by this opportunity being presented, but are rather met with an opportunity to meet more equity through it. So when that report was initiated, the dives into those pieces, it actually initiated a number of secondary resources that we have all at jumpstartca.org. So we have a student and family resource. We have student infographics for Black students as well as Latinx students. And then we also have joint board resolutions and a number of others, which actually brings me to the next point. So after the Jumpstart report was released, we actually released the data within one of the documents also on jumpstartca.org within that suite of materials. So by publishing this material, you're able to kind of really look into how different categories of students, particularly Black, Latinx, and Native students, are affected on the community college district level. And all that data was actually sourced from the California Community College Office of the Chancellor. And it was sourced through DataMart in the fall of 2019, as well as CDE enrollment data from 2019 to 2020. And as you can see from the previous slide, a lot of those numbers were really in depth, and that can be a little confusing to look at, right? So I actually developed a mapping tool to actually further look at how these pieces of data interact in a realistic way, in a more user-friendly way. So we developed this Jumpstart mapping tool, and it's really a visual representation of that data that was earlier provided. So really looking into those three demographics and being able to, you could scroll and click on this Tableau site that's actually linked through jumpstartca.org and click on each community college district and look at different demographics within those three and see what the equity rating is based on student participation, as well as how many students are needed to bring to parity based on that. So with all that information, I'm really pleased and excited to pass it to my colleague, Kylie Campbell, who's going to dive into the Access Gap tool that's been created and how that impacts all of us.
Thank you, Sesson, and hello, everyone. Very excited to be here on this beautiful Friday morning. It's great to hear Sesson just share the history of the Jumpstart report, because for me, as a practitioner working at Bakersfield College at the time in 2022, when the updated Jumpstart report came out, I was really looking at that for Kern Community College District, looking at our numbers, and it hit home with me because at the time, the chart that Sesson posted for you showed we had a low representation of Black students in dual enrollment and a gap of 212 students we needed to reach in order to have parity in our program. And I'd always prided myself and our work in our college as really striving and focusing on equity in our programs. So to me, I knew I needed to attack that and focus all of our team's efforts on reaching those students we were not reaching through dual enrollment. So for me, the big question was how and where. And so we started with, what does this look like going from the Jumpstart report, which identifies gaps at a district level, to identifying those gaps all the way down to the high school level. So I started working on this spreadsheet at the time that has now become the Dual Enrollment Access Gap tool that has been published and made a free resource by Career Ladders Project. And what the tool does, as I'm going to show you, is it takes the numbers and those gaps needed to reach parity, and it shows you where those out by high school across your partners. So I'm excited to share this with you today. Next slide, please, Jerry. Couple key definitions here within the tool, because we know dual enrollment has about 13 to 100 different terms you could call it in the state of California. So dual enrollment in the tool, we are referring to any time a high school student enrolls in a community college course. However, the tool can also be customized to narrow down to say, I'm only going to look at CCAP, or I'm going to focus on our early college programs, or I will include concurrent enrollment or advanced, whatever we're calling it at the moment. So dual enrollment in the tool, we are going to include every time a high school student enrolls in the community college course. And the reason for that is because that's what our chancellor's office does. So when they're reporting special admit high school students into our college classes, these are our dual enrollment students and FTES. Defining an access gap, went a little quick there, but that's okay. I can get to that. An access gap is whenever the representation of a group participating in dual enrollment does not reflect the representation of the same group at the high school. So that's when we're referring to a gap, and I'm going to focus mostly on when those gaps are negative. So when we have an underrepresentation of a student group in dual enrollment. Okay, now next slide. So what is the tool exactly? As I mentioned, it's a free resource. Career Ladders Project shares a free copy with you when you request your copy of the tool, which hopefully you will today. There are additional services available, and we have a partner here that we can share more about what that was like for them in their region, and we will. It's a Google Sheets document. If you are familiar with Google, it's fairly easy to navigate. Everything is within the Google Sheets, so you can collaborate by sharing it. You can store it, you can make copies, but it will be your copy to keep. I like to point out it's not an Excel file, so don't download it. It does not look the same. And the best thing is it's pre-populated with data, and you can also add data to it. So we've identified that there is data available from the California Department of Education. We know how many students are at each high school in each grade level and in each ethnicity group by high school. We do not know that for dual enrollment. For dual enrollment, we know how many dual enrollment students are reported to the chancellor's office from each college. We know their age and we know their ethnicity. We do not know at a statewide level which high school those students attend and what grade level they are in. So the tool gives an opportunity for practitioners who do have this data at the local level to enter the data and see how their representation looks by grade level and by ethnicity, and to see where those gaps exist by high school. So I'm going to show you examples of just the state level data. As we built the tool, we put all of our high schools and all of our colleges into the tool, and we'll look at some results from the last 2 years. This first chart depicts our California Department of Education count of high school students by grade level. And so you can see here, just looking at all students, there was a slight dip in the number of high school students in the state of California last year. And we saw that dip across all grade levels, except for our seniors. So our seniors was the only grade level that increased a bit. But as a whole, across the state, the number of our 9th through 12th graders is fairly distributed, right? There's a somewhat equal number across all grade levels. And when we switch to this next chart, which is dual enrollment, we don't see the same thing. We see that less 9th graders participate and that participation increases through 12th grade. And so with Vision 2030 and our new chancellor coming into California community colleges, there was a charge and a vision that we would start offering dual enrollment to students as early as the 9th grade, and that we would continue sequences of dual enrollment through 12th grade, which would take this from being a ramp shape from 9th grade to 12th grade increasing to being more rectangular and evenly distributed. So we're serving a more equal proportion of 9th graders as we are in 12th graders in these sequenced pathways. I do want to highlight for the all students bar to the right that while we saw a decrease in high school students across the state of California, we saw a significant increase in the number of students participating in dual enrollment. And we saw that increase at all 4 grade levels, which is very exciting. As we're looking at the percentages, I wanted to take those numbers and show you this participation rate is how many of our high school students are participating in dual enrollment. So statewide last year, we had almost 15% of high school students participating in dual enrollment. As I shared, a significant increase from the year prior. We did see that increase at all grade levels, but if we think about starting dual enrollment at 9th grade and how we're doing at implementing that across the state, we were only at 7.2% of 9th graders participating in dual enrollment last year. So as we keep offering more dual enrollment and breaking down barriers and offering dual enrollment earlier, we're hoping we see that participation increase, not just for 11th and 12th graders, but also for our 9th grade students. So these charts are getting a little harder to read because we have more that we're showing here, but of course we want to take the participation and break it down by ethnicity. So what you see here is a side-by-side of the high school representation by ethnicity for 2022-23 and 2023-24, right next to the dual enrollment participation or representation for each of those school years. And you can see it gets a little crowded. At a first glance, I don't see a whole lot other than when I look at, if I look closely at my African-American population, I can see that dual enrollment is lower. When I look at my Asian population, I can see the orange bars are higher than the blue. And then another standout is when I look at Hispanic or Latino, I can see the orange bar increasing, but still lower than the blue. So this is a overall view. we love about the Access Gap tool is actually this next slide. When we can clearly see, let's take all of that information, which is an overload, out of this and just look at what our gaps are. So our gaps in percentages show anything below the bar is an underrepresentation, where dual enrollment representation at our high schools statewide is lower than the representation of the students sitting in our high school classrooms. And so we see our underserved populations, we see underrepresentation very clearly. What you can also see is over the year, if those gaps increased or decreased. And so we can see with our African American students, that gap actually got larger. Okay, and 0.2% might not seem like a lot, but on the next slide, I'm going to show you that in a head count. And so you can see for our African American population that the gap grew by over 1,500 students, meaning that our dual enrollment served less Black and African American students in last year than it did the year prior. But if we look at our Hispanic or Latino gap, we saw the gap got smaller by around 3,000 students. So the important thing and what Jumpstart brings to light and provides resources so that it's not just we have the gaps, what do we do, is we identify the gaps and then we must work to address them. So I'm going to go through these next few slides to introduce you to the tool. Apologize if I go too quickly, but all the instructions are linked in the tool. The first step is going to be requesting the tool, and the link will be sent to you all who attend this webinar. Everyone will get their own copy. And when you get your copies, you're doing great, Jerry. Step 2 is fine. You can gather your data. So what data do you need in order to use the tool? You need to know which high schools you're going to include. Again, are you including dual enrollment, CCAP, non-CCAP, concurrent? There's a prep file so you can identify which schools you're going to use. And then you need to know how many students participated in dual enrollment, disaggregated by grade level or age, whichever is easiest for your college or high school to identify, and then also disaggregated by ethnicity. Next slide, please. Because this is a lot of information and you might be working with a data team or your institutional research team, we've created a separate file. So outside of the tool, there's a data prep file. And the nice thing about the data prep file is that as you're putting numbers into it and deleting things and moving things around, it won't mess up the formula of the Access Gap tool. So this is a file for you to figure out which high schools are we going to include, how do we want to sort them, and then entering the data to separate the students by grade level and age, and then another tab by ethnicity. So in this example here, you see all of the high schools I wanted to include. And if I had filled those in and sent this off to my research team, they would see clearly how I wanted to disaggregate that information by high school and by ethnicity and plugging in those numbers. You'll notice the bright yellow across all of these slides and all throughout the tool. The bright yellow means you can put information in here, and you should only input information in the bright yellow cells, and you will see that reminder across all tabs. Everything that is not bright yellow has a formula in it, and the moment you type something in there, it'll get messed up. But the best part is it's a shared document, so I can help you fix it. After you input your data, so the tool contains all of the CDS codes for all of the schools in California. There is a slight difference in schools that existed in 22-23 and those in 23-24, and so the tool has both. But if you have a school that's new and did not have a CDS code in 22-23, it will only pull data for 23-24. But all of these codes are linked within the tool so that you're entering the CDS codes, you can copy and paste them, and then it's going to populate the tool with the high school, college, and district names as shown, the official names. So not just the nicknames we give our schools, I like to call them. On the next slide. And so you go through the tabs here, and after the schools populate on the left, you're able to copy in the data from the data prep file. There are 2 tabs that you insert data on. So after you input your school on tab 4, you input data on tab 5 and tab 6. And then it's like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. But the beauty of the tool is after the data's in, all of the rest of the table, or all the rest of the tabs are going to populate with charts and tables. And so your work is done with getting the data. Now we have to address the gaps. So let's take a look at what comes after the data. I think I accidentally hit a slide. Apologies for that. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Jerry. So you're going to get 6 tabs full of tables and charts. The tables, the table A and table B, are overwhelmingly large because they contain all of the data that you have put into the tool, all of the data we pulled from the CDE, and all of the data we pulled from the chancellor's office. And it puts it into one place and organizes it so that you can review participation by high school. So it's a large chart, and it's definitely, or a large table, definitely not something you want to go copying and pasting and sharing places, but looks great in a Google Sheet. The next tabs, the chart A1 and A2, I like to explain the difference between these because in the first chart, you're going to give a summary chart of all of the data put into the tool all in one. So like I did with the state of California, it took all colleges and all high schools and gave summary of where we're at as a state. So if you put 30 schools into the tool, chart A1 is going to show all of that together in the same chart. The next charts, the A2 and B2, are going to take that and let you separate it by high school. So if you put 30 high schools in there, there's a drop-down menu that will let you individually select each of those high schools and make those charts and show you that information high school by high school. So you can really have the conversations about your gaps and addressing those gaps with each high school partner with individualized data, tables and charts. So it's really cool. The next slide is actually the same thing, just to show that we do the same thing with ethnicity disaggregation, but the tabs will look very similar. So what do we do next? You have all these charts and tables. I know McKenna will be able to share what it's like to look at those for the first time. It's a lot, but what we do from there is not just say, great, here's data. All of the tabs can be printed out as one-pagers, so you can print them out and have discussions. As I shared, you can share and copy the document and send it to people. Because it's a Google document, everything easily copies or downloads, so you can put it into presentations and share it with others. McKenna did that. She can actually show you the examples. And what I love the most is that as you're looking at the data, you ask questions, you reflect, you have deep discussions about how to tackle these gaps. And all of those reflection and discussion prompts are included within the tool. So you can follow those, you can make your own, but everywhere from putting in the data, reviewing the data, to addressing what the data shows us is all included in this free tool. I think I have one more. And you're not alone, as if you haven't heard enough from me just now. There are videos linked throughout the tool that I made so that I'm there with you to help you. How do I do that? Or to go in more detail about using each tab, sharing the information, inputting the data. And so there's tools all throughout, or sorry, videos all throughout the tool for you to click on and hopefully guide you. And I'm also here if you have additional questions. So with that, I know I went through that quickly, but I wanted to have as much time as possible here. We have our special guest, McKenna Salazar from the We Will Northern San Joaquin Valley K-16 Collaborative. And what was so special about the collaborative and our partnership is that this was they were the first regional group that we partnered with to use the tool on a regional level. And so just a brief background on what that looked like after contracting with We Will. I had individual meetings with 3 community colleges within their region and worked with their dual enrollment team and their research team to collect the data, which we then put into the tool for them. And then we had an in-person workshop to show them how to use the tool and to start reflecting on using the data in the tool. And so we're so pleased to have McKenna here to share that experience with you all. So with that, I will transition to McKenna Salazar.
Thank you, Kylie. Jerry, if we can go to the next slide, please. I'm so grateful to be here and to have the opportunity for We Will to be able to share more about our use of the Regional Access Gap tool and what we plan to do with that work in the future. Kylie and I go way back together to our days in dual enrollment at Kern Community College District, myself with Porterville College and herself with Bakersfield College. And so it's great to see everything kind of come full circle and to be working together again, but more closely with Career Ladders Project. Next slide, please, Jerry. The We Will K-16 Workforce and Education Collaborative is backed by the Center for Educational Partnerships at UC Merced and is a dynamic partnership uniting educational institutions, workforce leaders, and community organizations across Merced, Stanislaus, and San Joaquin counties. Our mission is to dismantle systemic barriers and bridge educational gaps, ensuring that under-resourced students have equitable access to high-wage, high-demand career pathways. We focus currently on critical sectors like healthcare and education, but we will be expanding those sectors very, very soon with some of the different grant opportunities happening in the state by aligning K-16 education systems with regional workforce needs, bringing partners together, trying to figure out how to make it work and create additional opportunities for students. Through our collaborative efforts, we're providing students with skills, knowledge, and opportunities necessary to thrive, fostering a skilled and diverse workforce that strengthens our communities and workforce moving forward. So part of the We Will Collaborative's mission is to really increase that transition opportunity. How are we helping students as they go through their life, their educational journey, and then enter into that workforce journey at whatever pathway or on-ramp or off-ramp that might be? Also focusing in on affordability, work-based learning, and college and career readiness. And that's exactly why the We Will Collaborative decided to partner with Career Ladders Project and look at dual enrollment more closely. That's one of our affordability measures. It's one of our college and career readiness measures. It's how do we help students and actually get them to their end goal. Next slide, please. So as Kylie mentioned, Career Ladders Project came and conducted a wonderful workshop where our partners were able to gather together and really review the data across the region. Now, one of the great things about the Dual Enrollment Access Gap tool is that we were able to identify not only gaps within specific counties or specific school sites, but a regional approach, which is exactly what we're here for as a K-16 collaborative. So I only pulled 2 slides that showed the data from our region, but I thought that there were some interesting things happening here. And this is some information that we discussed at that workshop as a collaborative. And so what you'll see here is the dual enrollment participation rate by age or grade level. And you see that there's a nice little increase every single time year over year. However, one of the things that stood out for the We Will K-16 region was in 11th grade. We've got more 11th graders taking dual enrollment courses than we do in 12th grade. And so it makes you pause for a second when you're looking at the data and you're actually analyzing it and going to use it to look at work that might be focused. It makes one wonder, where should we focus our efforts? Is there enough communication and messaging to our seniors? Are there enough opportunities built into their schedules? Are they being encouraged to enroll in dual enrollment courses and what that communication might look like? But it's an area for our region to dive deeper into and identify some additional measures that we might focus on. On the next graph, you'll see dual enrollment representation gaps by ethnicity. And this mirrors kind of what Kylie showed earlier in one of the examples across the state. This is particularly for our region in the northern San Joaquin Valley. So again, Merced, Stanislaus, and San Joaquin counties. And this actually shows the number of students that are being underrepresented within their different ethnicity or head count here. So you'll see some great disparity, of course, in our African American populations and in our Hispanic or Latino populations. But then you see some great achievements going on with the Asian population, Filipino populations, and then some that are just right on par with Pacific Islander or 2 or more races. And then you'll see that the gap actually grew by 93 students for our white students. So this is an area that we can dive into as a collaborative across the region and be able to identify some different areas. So one of our steps we're going to be doing next, and we'll talk more about this in just a second, is looking at countywide where this gap might be taking place. If it's across the entire region, maybe it's a regional effort. If it's a really focused in one particular county, maybe it's a county-specific effort or a site or district-specific effort. So with the Access Gap tool, we're able to drill it down that far with that much detail, which is wonderful for our students and our administrators to be able to support them in that way. So feedback from our workshop. I wanted to share with you directly from the participants of our workshop. We had about 50 folks represented across K-12, community college, and four-year university partners that were present. It was a full day of interaction, of looking at data, reviewing and discussing and planning, and it was a really great event. So one of the questions that was answered is, what did you learn? And this is feedback directly from those participants. So folks learned about how to reach out to students to close gaps, learned that tracking numbers are important to determine discrepancies, and understanding that this is a great resource for facilitating program growth and improvement. It was important for folks to understand that they were able to look and identify which ethnicities and populations are most underserved in a quick look. It wasn't difficult once we understood how to navigate the access tool to be able to pull the data and then now make plans for it. The next question that was asked, Jerry, if we can go to the next slide. There we go. The aha moments. What are things that folks learned? What was exciting to them? What was like, oh my goodness, this is great. One of the areas that popped up was that they felt there was a big lack of communication between community college partners and the K-12 partners. We were able to uncover and discover some conversations that maybe need to be held and identified ways that we as a collaborative can help navigate that and bring partners together. High schools closest to community colleges geographically actually had the biggest gaps when we were looking at the data, which is really interesting. So it makes it a place that we can dive deeper and really pinpoint and identify and see what might be happening there. Work for systems to understand each other and meet in the middle. It was really a great opportunity for our community college partners that were present and our K-12 partners that were present to come together and make sure that, hey, we are on the same page. We are driving in the right direction. Or, oops, we need to kind of shift focus here. And then one comment that I loved was, there's a lot I need to educate myself on. And that's exactly how I felt about the Dual Enrollment Access Gap tool when we looked at it for the very first time. Like Kylie mentioned, it can be a little overwhelming at first, but take it piece by piece and step by step. Watch those videos that are available to us, and you can really break it down and make it very user-friendly. The next slide is the common findings. Folks loved that they could actually identify and then have conversations around the data that was happening. I noticed that certain ethnic groups had the same gaps across sites, across counties, across the region, and it was kind of similar across the board. But it also showed that the same population across the region needs that assistance and helps us to understand what we can do to navigate that. After communication at that workshop, we discovered that there might be an overload of communication to parents. We learned from some school districts that they were really not wanting to communicate with parents under a certain model or a certain system, but wanted to do it in a different way. And then, hearing that from roundabouts, it's like, well, maybe we're using avenues of communication that aren't really the most effective. Maybe we need to look at that differently so that we can really make sure our communication is targeted and is being well received. And the next one is addressing barriers. So some barriers that we were able to address at that Dual Enrollment Access Gap tool workshop was talking about messaging, changing the perceptions and providing exposure of dual enrollment to students and families. That goes right along with increasing awareness in the community. And we were able to identify that we needed more people in the room. We are a large collaborative. We're spanning 3 very populous and very diverse counties in our K-16 collaborative. And having just 50 people at the workshop, while that was wonderful, it left a desire for more. We need more. And so we're looking at being able to expand that in the future. And our next slide, our last one for overall feedback. Participants loved everything. And so it was a great opportunity. Really, K-12 and community college partners and university partners love looking at data. And so they really appreciated the opportunity to come together and take a look at the Access Gap tool and figure out what's next. They appreciated the opportunity to slow down and really take a look at the data. And you can't make up facts. I loved the fact that someone wrote that exactly. And so it was kind of like, yep, you're right. It's now right in front of your face. It's not just an assumption any longer, or something that you're trying to navigate or avoid or sweep under the rug. It's like, no, it's here. These are your numbers. Now, what are you going to do about it? Conversation was great for K-12, but where were the community college partners? At our workshop, we had one college that was very well represented. They had a whole table of their team there, but we were lacking some other community college representation. And so it made it so that we were able to now go back as a collaborative and say, okay, here's a focus area we need to work on, and make some specific phone calls and emails and reach outs to make sure we're making those connections. So we're excited about the next steps and what's next on deck for the We Will K-16 Collaborative and the Dual Enrollment Access Gap tool in our partnership with Career Ladders Project. If we can go to the last slide here for me, Jerry. What's next for us? We're going to be reviewing the tool with strategic discussion points. We're going to be working to scale this to all partners. Like I mentioned, we had a wonderful workshop. There wasn't enough people there. And so we're going to be targeting communication, not only to community college partners, but specific K-12 partners that weren't able to make it for one reason or another, and be able to have those conversations about the tool, not only showing it and presenting it to them, but helping them to understand how to use it and to drive those strategic conversations forward. We are looking forward to our continued partnership with Career Ladders Project with some virtual discussions for our K-12 partners that will talk about our strengths, our barriers, and what the needs and future goals are for dual enrollment in each district. And that's not only going to affect their own access gaps there, but how we're able to expand that across the region. We are going to make sure that there's connections with post-secondary. You saw the feedback. Where were the community college partners? We need more conversation with them to make sure that we can identify obstacles. Coming from the K-12 lens, we're ready. We want to do dual enrollment. And coming from community college lens, they're ready. They want to do dual enrollment. But how do we meet in the middle and work to navigate those obstacles and barriers that each group faces in their own regard? Sometimes that's really unaware to one another of what's happening here and what's happening here, and how do we bridge that and make it happen together. We're looking forward to making that regional approach that I've spoken about here today, that community of practice and a support network for dual enrollment, not only instructors and administrators and students, but also creating some family resources that we can then share out across the region. And of course, that continuous improvement. We're constantly going to be looking at the data and analyzing where we're at, what groups are happening, what projects might be having sustainable approaches that we can scale across the region, and how we can then impact all of the students that we serve. So again, we're really grateful that the We Will K-16 Collaborative was chosen to participate in this webinar today and to share our experience with partnering with Career Ladders Project. And we're excited about the work that we have on deck to move forward. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Dan Stortz, who's the Vice President of Pathways and Implementation with the Linked Learning Alliance. Thanks,
Thank you, McKenna. Appreciate that. And appreciate the Naomi and Career Ladders Project for inviting me to be part of this group and part of this conversation. I just want to talk a little bit about doing in the context of CTE and of integrated pathways, like linked learning pathways, and want to just give very brief overview of what that means. So when we're talking about integrated pathways, we, the Linked Learning Alliance, developed something called the Linked Learning Approach, but the mission of the Alliance is really to promote the kind of integrated learning for students so that all students, regardless of background, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, have the same opportunities that are going to lead to successful transitions for themselves and give them the ability to see all the possibilities, and so decide what's the correct route for themselves, and how to navigate that. That's what's important. So again, as I said, the linked learning approach is an approach that was developed through research and through practice, but it's not the only way to achieve this. And there's a lot of great work. It's a very diverse state with diverse communities and lots of different ways to achieve this. But the core elements are an integrated program of study, integrated student supports, and integrated career and work-based learning opportunities. So again, that students are seeing the range of options that are available to them when they leave high school. So if we could go to the next slide, the integrated program of study is really the core, the foundations of the work. And they include a rigorous and equitable instructional design so that students are prepared for academic success beyond high school, because we all know how important that is. And then that there are interdisciplinary projects that incorporate their career learning, incorporate their work-based learning opportunities, incorporate the different subject areas. They're kind of the classical subject areas, English, math, science, and social sciences, together with their CTE or career learning courses. And then that there is access to early college credit, specifically dual enrollment courses, and increasingly that they can have the opportunity to get up to the 12 units of early college credit through preferably dual enrollment opportunities that are available to them. And these are also aligned with another important initiative that I think a lot of you probably out there are involved with, which is the Golden State Pathways program at high school. And that is an initiative of the state, a major investment of the state to promote the kind of integrated learning that we're talking about here. And that is expressed in the Golden State Pathways program framework and the outcomes if you have a grant. And finally, that an important aspect of this work, of this integrated work, is shared learning experiences for students and integrated student support. So a very supportive, small learning community with a cohort structure, so that students can support one another, so that the adults and the students working together know each other well, can support each other well from the outset. Of course, it's important to have interventions in place for students who are struggling, need extra support, so that, again, all students can access the opportunities. But if you, the basis of that and the hope is that there will be fewer students that need specific targeted supports, is if you have a strong, healthy learning community. And that's really at the foundations of this work. So if you could go to the next slide. And so in linked learning pathways, meaningful early college credit opportunities mean dual enrollment opportunities tied to a pathway theme, aligned to certifications and degree granting programs beyond high school, sometimes certification programs within high school. You know, ideally, you want to see those high school students earning industry certifications. I was at a school yesterday where I was so impressed with the number of certifications that students have the opportunity to earn in high school. And yet when I met with students as a part of a focus group and asked them, you know, if there were one thing that you could improve about your pathway experience, they'd say, we'd like to have more industry certifications available to us. And I was amazed by that, because they have a lot. They have much more than, you know, I think the average high school student does. But clearly they recognize the value of that and wanted more of those opportunities. And then their dual enrollment that's integrated into a cohorted program of study, because that not only aligns with a pathway beyond high school for them to success in academics beyond high school and into transition into a successful career, but also it provides the foundations and the culture of support for success that students need in their dual enrollment classes, so that all students can meet the rigor of those college level classes. And that is really important piece of this, as I think everyone here knows. And then I would say some examples of that really quickly. There's in San Bernardino, a middle college high school that does career-focused linked learning work, and is offering, their AA degrees and with incredible success in terms of the percentages. I also want to shout out, a couple weeks ago, I was at Wheatland High School in Wheatland, and I think I see Carol, I don't know, Carol Kaiser I saw her name on the participation list here, who's from Wheatland. I did not know she was going to be here, but I wanted to mention that I was there, and they had, you are here, and I want to say they have a really impressive, they're not a linked learning school, they are GSPP grantee school, and they have amazing CTE programs and an incredible relationship with Yuba College, and which I just learned about a couple weeks ago. And the dual enrollment opportunities and that they are providing for all of their students are incredible. And it just highlighted for me, with a good relationship, with a good solid relationship with your community college is so important. And I would also I would like to say, in terms of, I think the tool here, the Access Gap tool, is so important. When we're working with linked learning schools, we have a certification program, and we ask for data. We ask for dual enrollment data. We talk to them in the focus group about their experiences with dual enrollment. It's a high priority for us. Having this tool, the data that we ask for doesn't go nearly as deep and isn't as comprehensive as what the Access Gap tool provides. And I think we would like to see, and have started to promote with the schools we work with directly, that they start using this tool as a great way to really dig down, because we're all focused on equitable access, opportunities, and success for students. And this is a fantastic way to kind of analyze how you're doing on that and begin those conversations, as McKenna really pointed out so well, in the way that they're using this data to improve those outcomes for students. And that's why really I was appreciated being here. One kind of last little comment I would make is that, so yesterday I also had the opportunity to talk with the students about their dual enrollment opportunities, and this was at a school in San Bernardino. And they have some wonderful dual enrollment opportunities they're working on. They have a number, for years they've had articulations agreements, so they have some of those in place. They're moving to and emphasizing, kind of trying to create all dual enrollment opportunities, move in that direction. But I was really interested and surprised that when I brought up the topic with students, they started to tell me the differences between their articulated classes and credits they were getting, the dual enrollment classes and the credits they were getting, and how they needed to analyze and consider the different kinds of early college credits that they were getting, and what the implications were for where they could go next, and what the pathways that were to them. And I was just so impressed by that, because man, that's who, a young person is their own best advocate. And so for them, knowing the difference and the value of dual enrollment versus other kinds of early college credit opportunities, I thought was really powerful. And again, so getting at those students, getting at those families, I think this tool is a great foundational place to start, to make sure you're reaching the right population, the right people in your community, everyone in your community, to do this work. So I just wanted to share that kind of as a final thought.
Well, Dan, thank you so very much. You have an awesome job. You get to go hang out with super cool students at amazing high schools. I'm kind of jealous. And I think I need to shadow you on some of your site visits.
Absolutely.
So I do want to invite, hi folks, I'm Naomi Castro. I've been the little, Jerry and I have been the elves behind the scene for this webinar. And we have some time for some questions and answers of our amazing presenters here. So please feel free, you can drop questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. And I know there was a great back and forth that Kylie answered, but Kylie, could you unmute and then just speak aloud the question and the response?
Yes, so Dr. Raquel Michelle Jackson, hopefully I said your last name properly, had asked if adult school dual enrollment would be added into the tool. And so adult schools can be added into the tool. You can include them in your dual enrollment data. But with that request, when I send the free copy of the tool, please just email me back so we can work together. The adult school enrollment data is separate from the CDE than the 9th through 12th grade comprehensive data, but I can add it. So, and then in the next version of the tool, hopefully next year, it will all be there. So we are working on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any more questions? Well, we'll keep looking in the chat. I have a couple of questions. Kylie, this tool was long in the making, and you piloted it when you were at Bakersfield working with your own sites, which is pretty amazing. Can you give us like an overview of like how many folks have requested to use this, or how many tools are out there in the state that people are working through? I put her on the spot. I didn't
You
give her a
did
heads
put
up.
me on the spot. So I have received, I was actually going to pull up the exact number for you. We have received 164, without including today, responses for the tool. So each of those are individual districts, colleges, or high schools that have a copy of the tool to use.
Fantastic. Yay, that's so exciting. So I love this through point with this webinar. So it started with EdTrust West looking at data statewide and creating a tool where folks could kind of go in and see where their college district was in terms of equity. And then we had this amazing practitioner who said, I need that information at a more granular scale, and just made it happen. And now we've released it to the state. And then we've got our colleagues at Linked Learning Alliance now saying, this is pretty good. This is pretty helpful. Let's start using this everywhere. And so I just wanted to kind of emphasize again that the tool is free to use. Don't be intimidated by it. It's a lot of numbers in there, but you just take one sheet at a time. We've got great video instructions on how to use it. And if you need more help, you just email us and we can go from there. But yeah, you guys are so efficient and amazing. We are a little bit early. So I'm wondering if there's any closing thoughts before we kind of wrap up and talk about the next webinar. We're good. We're good. Okay. Oh, wait, there is something else in the, just lots of kudos in the chat. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just going to say that I think this is, and one of the challenges that it's all about relationships and partners. This is a great tool. And especially I think when the high school can get their community college that they work with to really work together with this tool, and not one or the other. I think it's even, more powerful.
Yeah, agreed. So we do have another webinar coming up next week. We know this is a challenging time of year, and we really appreciate everyone who was able to attend today. The next webinar is going to focus on another tool, also free, and it is the scheduling tool. So as the CLP team travels across the state, one of the biggest challenges folks have is, how do we schedule these classes? College schedules and high school schedules don't link up and match each other. And we have different calendars and start dates and all of that. So this tool helps the partners actually kind of work through and pre-plan. And it also includes an accounting of the high school ADA so that you're meeting your instructional minutes, so that you can claim apportionment, or what kind of apportionment you can claim. And it also helps on the college side to calculate the contact hours, which is obviously very important for colleges to be able to confer credit. So that's going to be a great webinar. We've got a QR code there. I put the link in the chat. If you registered for this one, you may have registered for that one too, which is great, but feel free to pass on that link to folks who might need it. And with that, I think we're going to give you 5 minutes back of your time. We'll send out a recording, and we'll also send out the slide deck. So thank you everybody so much. We really appreciate you all.